Welcome to Under the Lens. Come and enjoy an extraordinary, raw, and unfiltered podcast that delivers debate, discussions, and interviews about film, pop culture, and everything in between. Here is your host, film critic and journalist, Byron Lafayette.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Under the Lens. Today, we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, and it is involving Star Trek and studios and new projects that are coming or may not be coming due to these studios. It's going to be very, very interesting. And joining me for this discussion is going to be Jordan Morris, and he is a friend of the podcast. And if you have been listening to any of my episodes for any length of time, you probably heard him come on a few different times as we've talked about Strange New Worlds and Star Trek in general. We always have very great conversations. So welcome to the program, Jordan. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me back, bro, Cutis. It's good to be here.
I'm really excited to talk about this because it's very interesting, because normally, like, I don't always get into whole, like, studio politics and stuff like that. Like, occasionally I do, but when it comes to Star Trek, I'm very invested in what happens with studios.
Oh, absolutely. Me as well. Like, and this sort of feels like the first big fallout of the streaming wars, for lack of a better term. I mean, I'm sure everyone out there listening knows, like, there's way too many streaming services. It's not sustainable. No one can afford this. I mean, if we could have, we would have stuck with cable all those years ago. So, like, just to see where this is going, and is this the first domino to fall, and how is this going to lead into, other streaming services, and, who's going to acquire what? Is it going to be broken up? How does it impact IPs? There's just so many potential, like, paths we can go down. Like, it's fascinating to me.
It's very, very interesting because, I completely agree with you that, like, we are starting to see the fallout of the streaming wars. Because, for those who are listening, I would say basically the streaming wars for the most part are pretty much over now, in the sense that Netflix won. It's like
Netflix is the only one who won.
Yeah, Netflix is the only one who has won the streaming wars and is more successful than it's ever been before, where we're seeing a lot of these streaming services that have popped up that are not doing so well. And it's like, I would say probably the second victor, I would say, of the streaming wars, not anywhere near as successful as Netflix, I would say would be the kind of 1-2 punch of Amazon Prime and Amazon Freevee. And honestly, I think the only reason that Amazon Prime has survived the streaming wars so well is because they are able to put in all of their merch sales within their streaming platform. Because, like, when I was watching Fallout the other day, I noticed that it was like, hey, you like Fallout? Go buy the games, go buy the shirts, go do this and that. So they have a whole revenue stream that other studios don't have.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Like, the other side to that coin is everything you said is absolutely correct. The beauty of Prime is not their moneymaker. They make their money with all the sales of merchandise online. If they lose a little bit of money on Prime, okay, they're still getting your Prime membership, because for the free shipping, it's worth it, like, bar none. And like you said, it's basically, instead of having to spending, 50, 100, or hell, $1 billion a year on advertising, people have a free streaming platform included, and they can advertise on that, and they don't have to pay anybody else for advertising time.
Absolutely. And it was a brilliant marketing strategy, and it was very, very smart. And it's like, so we're going to be seeing Amazon Prime content and all that for years to come. Like, they're not going to have any problems. And, what we're talking about this episode really is going to be with Paramount Plus, because Paramount Plus is one of those weird situations where I almost make the joke of that hip hop album of Suffering from Success. That, like, that Paramount Plus has this extremely lucrative IP in Star Trek and in other ones. And their app is, I want to say the last time I checked, it's in the top 5 of like the biggest apps on the planet. And so it's like, they have somewhere like, I can't remember how many subscribers they have, but like they're in the top 5 with the most subscribers. And so it's kind of like, okay, your app is very successful. You obviously have an audience, but they're having a huge amount of trouble being liquid, being in the black, because, streaming is expensive, creating content is expensive.
Yeah, I think they got a little big for their britches, and I think you'd agree. They spent too much too fast too soon.
Yes.
I will say their marketing was not the best it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Their app's a little glitchy. It's not the worst, but it's got some issues, which, I mean, for you and I, that's not really going to bother us. But for some people, like, I mean, if I'm watching Discovery or whatever the current show going on, it sometimes freaks out once or twice and has to stop and reload. I'm vested. I want to see it, but a lot of people get tired of that.
No,
Some of their
absolutely.
and like, but a lot of people, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to. I'm like, hey, what'd you think of the new Star Trek? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, like Strange New Worlds, Picard, Discovery. What are you talking about, dude? They have no idea Paramount Plus, or even when it was CBS All Access, they have no idea this exists and that there's actually new Star Trek content being produced. And like, you and I were talking about Halo a couple weeks ago. I was talking to someone like, there's a Halo show? People don't even know. So I fault some of that on the advertising. I mean, you're always going to have people who are just kind of oblivious, but like, there's an abnormally high number of people who aren't aware that this is out there.
That's absolutely true, because it is. It's like, there's so many, like you said, people that they have no idea, and it's like, I remember that there was an announcement, like, I always joke I'm a total boomer in the sense that, I love watching NCIS and, all those shows. And like, I was in this one Facebook group and they were talking about, oh yeah, there's this new NCIS spinoff show coming out. And they're like, and it's going to be a Paramount Plus, exclusive. And there was a lot of these, people who watched CBS in the group who weren't even aware of what Paramount Plus was. And they were like, wait, I want to watch this show. Well, how am I going to watch it when it comes out? And like you said, there is, I think, a lot of fault with the advertising there that, it's just been a little clunky. And, and it's kind of wild to me that with the clunkiness of their marketing, their app and the rollout, that they still manage to have X amount of subscribers, and as many as they do have. It's kind of incredible. But yeah, I agree with you that I think that they kind of did a little too much too fast, because it's like, you see how expensive the Halo show is, that's a very pricey show. Then you're running, at one point, we were seeing 3 live action Star Trek shows going at once with 1 animated, and it's like, it's a lot of money.
It is a lot. One interesting sidebar, and I have no way to confirm this, so I apologize if I give misinformation. Part of the reason I think Picard season 3 was so successful, supposedly, and I take this with some grain of salt, I don't know how accurate this. Supposedly, they produced season 3 for $10 million total. That seems a little low, but you figure they had already built the Stargazer set, which they reused as the Titan, and it was basically centered on the ship. So,
that is interesting. I mean, it is true, because like, what do they call it? Like bottle episodes, that like the first like 3 or 4 episodes were, when they were within the gravity well and everything, were very much bottle episodes, like very much.
Other than, the ending, on various, I don't want to give too many spoilers away. I mean, it's been out a year, but I know there are still people out there who haven't watched it, and I know certain people, I won't say any names, but you know who you are. But yeah, like there's a few extra sets in the last couple episodes. There's basically, even trying to think, like, other than say episode 6 in the space station, which they could have redressed a corridor, for all we know, and it worked. But like, it was very much self-contained, and though thankfully we did get more Starship shots. I'm a sucker for a pretty Starship shot. Not gonna lie. Sorry, tangent there, but like, finding ways to cut costs, like that's a shrewd move they've made. A couple other things they've done. The deal they made with Netflix to get Prodigy. So from what I've read across various sources across the internet, it looked like Prime was in the biggest position to land Prodigy, and they were willing to greenlight a season 3 as part of the deal.
Oh wow!
But the ended up going to Netflix. Let's see if I get my facts right. Netflix agreed to pay for, I think Prime was going to pay for like 25% of it and greenlight a season 3 with additional money. Netflix agreed to pay for 30% of it, and they paid, I think, for the cost of season 1 for the distribution rights, and then they threw them some residuals, so they had some cash flow coming in. And with the financial situation they're in, that's what won out. And just to give a brief synopsis, so by spending too much too soon too fast, a lot of these streaming services have done that. Basically, the gist of the matter is Paramount's $15 billion in debt. Last I checked, Disney was around 30, and Warner Brothers was about 50, if memory serves, 50 billion. So like this whole, I mean, they talk about Warner Brothers trying to buy Paramount, and I'm like, you're $50 billion in debt. Like, I'm like, are you going to take on another 15? Like, how are you going to do this? You're already like so deep in the hole. Like, it just never seemed to make logistical sense to me in that regard. I don't know. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We'll talk about the potential suitors coming up, but
no, it is true, because like, it's so interesting to me, like just when you see, the movements that you look at, like, the app of Paramount Plus, it has, I'll have to, look up how many subscribers they have, but I know it's a significant number. I'm actually kind of curious here. I'm
actually doing the same thing. I'm looking it up. Great minds.
Because I'm curious what the because I know it recently went up, which is a good thing. So let's see.
As of the end of February, per Hollywood Reporter, Paramount Global hit 67.5 million Paramount Plus streaming subscribers worldwide.
Okay, so it's like, I mean, that's a decent chunk of people, so it's like you have a lot of that. And then it's like you have this problem where your company is in a huge amount of debt. Okay, you then have, this very large and potentially lucrative platform of all these people. You have a huge IP of Star Trek. And then you look at how that IP of Star Trek is what's keeping a large chunk of that subscriber base subscribed to, give you money. So you have to keep paying to make these shows so that people, stay subscribed. But then you're putting more money out, which is adding to your debt. But you have to keep putting that money out in order to try and keep that subscriber money coming in so that you don't go completely under. It's like, it's this huge, like, this pyramid game, basically.
Vicious cycle there. Absolutely. And
cycle,
and I would say, and correct me if you feel differently, their biggest IPs, I would say right now, Star Trek, Transformers is pretty valuable, and this is a bit of a generalization, but anything Taylor Sheridan does, whether it's Yellowstone, the Special Ops Lioness, anything he touches is gold right now. They've got a really great selection of classic movies. I mean, Paramount Pictures has produced so many good films over the last, 70 years? And then I feel like part of the problem is, like, if I go on there, I'm like, oh, hey, I feel like watching like Indiana Jones, which I think that was that Paramount, or am I totally off?
I believe they did have the original trilogy on there.
I believe they did, but it's like, now granted, now it's owned by like Disney, so that makes little sense. But they keep selling off, and contracts fluctuate, obviously, but like Romancing the Stone, I think was on there. It was on there, then it was on Netflix, then it was on Max. Like, their films are constantly in flux. It's great to get on there and be able to watch Cheers and Frasier, and then bringing Frasier back. Actually, that was a pretty good reboot. Another again strong IP.
I enjoyed that. I really liked the reboot.
like they've got their IPs aren't their problem. I feel like management is, and I kind of hate myself for saying this. Okay, Netflix is what? The standard package is between like 15 and $20 a month. If not a little bit higher now. They've had a couple of price hikes. I think it's $60 for the year because I pay for the yearly subscription to Paramount Plus. Yes, I get ads, but I only ever get ads during like the new shows. Like if I watch a classic episode, they have added them back. Like there are ads during TNG now, DS9, Voyager, some of the classic shows. But like I can get on there and watch Frasier without any ads, even though I have the ad version. So I hate to say they should add more ads, but from a business perspective, it might make a little more sense.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, because like it's, you know, and like you said, it just seems like they do have a problem of management because, like you said, their IPs are huge, you know, that they have, and then it's like honestly, like you know, from a network TV perspective, they have one of the largest and most diverse like TV catalogs on there of like when you look at all the shows that they have on there, you know, from, you know, network, you know, it's like they have all of the FBI shows are on there, all the NCIS shows are on there. There's so, you know, Hawaii Five-0, you know, all these different ones on there. There are these massive shows, tons of sitcoms, everything like that. Like they have so much that it's like this should be second to Netflix, you know, in size, like with the content they have on there, if it was managed right and if people knew about it, you know, it's crazy what you can watch on there.
And like, I mean, if Netflix has gone up with everything you've said that's on there that we've talked about. Okay, Trekkies are crazy. We are the most. It's a bit of a niche group. There's not as many of us as there are Star Wars fans, and that's okay. But okay, if I'm paying $60 a year, and maybe my pricing's off, I don't remember. I'm keeping it either way. But with that mindset, which is I would say what most Star Trek fans have, if it's at $6 a month, bump it up to 10.
Exactly.
You know, or bump it up to 11. Like at 67.5 million subscribers, if you add like $3 like a month to the subscription, that's a nice chunk of change every month. If you're talking, you know, easily another, you say, even if you keep all of them at $67.5 million, you know, that's math. You're getting over $200 million a month extra just on a $3 a month price increase. You know,
and
that helps you.
And I feel like most people would pay that. You know, it's like, you know, that's not a massive bump. You know,
like I went through the dark times from 2005 till 2017 where there was no Star Trek on TV. I don't want to ever do that again. So yes, if it's $3 a month, then you know what? You know, space it out to where like, okay, I know we're going to hit a point where we're not going to have as many shows on, but like when they had the 5 shows, it's like, okay, I always thought this was dumb too. Like they got to where like, was it the last season 2 of Picard and season 4 of Discovery overlapped and had like there was 3 straight weeks where it was like, I had 2 episodes to watch every Thursday, which is great and all, but like, just finish one out and then start the other because that's 3 more weeks of content you have covered.
Exactly.
Like, you're going to push people out to get another month subscription. Or if you want to give a break in between just to let them process things, again, then you've guaranteed a whole nother month of subscribers because they want to watch the next Star Trek show. They did the same thing with Strange New World. It's like, I mean, I love getting double. I mean, as a fan, don't get me wrong, but it's like, hey, now, like, from a business perspective, it just seems like not the best idea.
No, exactly. Because like, I mean, you know, like you said, you know, I imagine like, okay, you know, have Discovery come out, you know, in the fall and have Strange New Worlds come out in the spring. You know, it's like, you know, there's like, you know, fans like us, you know, like, you know, we'll always take as much content as they give us, you know, but also we don't mind waiting a little while either. You know, it's like, it's wild, but I agree with you. Like, you know, those dark times when there was no Star Trek on TV, it's like, I remember what a horrible feeling it was thinking like, man, I don't know when there's going to be another Star Trek show. You know, it was
if there's ever going to be another Star Trek show.
Because I mean, you know, I'm very happy that Enterprise has has seen a resurgence, a popularity, and people kind of rediscovering it, and realizing that it is actually a pretty good show. I'm really happy about that. But it's like, people forget, that show killed the IP. I mean, it killed the IP, and it wasn't all its own fault. It's like,
no, UPN was dying, and we could have a whole another episode just about that.
It's like, Star Trek Enterprise was a good show that came along at the wrong time. I feel like if Enterprise, like, honestly, if you took all of Enterprise the way it is right now and released it when Discovery released, it would be an absolutely beloved show.
You'd probably get legit 10 seasons out of it.
Oh, easily. Yeah, like easily. Because there's so many people, it's interesting, that I've seen, who are completely removed from all of the drama of when it came out and all the issues that happened then, who have just started watching it recently, and they're like, this is a really good show. I really like this, and it's the Star Trek show I actually recommend people start watching normally. Like, if they're a brand new fan who've never seen anything with Star Trek, I normally will recommend, hey, watch Discovery, because it kind of has a little bit of that modern feel to it, so that, so they can get used to it. And then I tell them to go to TNG.
I can't argue with your logic at all.
Yeah.
Part of that show's problem, and not to get on too deep of a tangent, some studio interference. Originally, the plan was to have the entire first season was going to be set on Earth leading up to the launch of the Enterprise, which would have been a really interesting take. Probably too bold for 2001, but 2017 Discovery era, that would have been great. I think you would agree the first couple seasons, while there's some good ones, it meanders a bit. Then season 3, the post 9/11, it got really dark, but a lot of things did. Case in point, the newer Battlestar Galactica, which, having grown up with the old one, it's hard for me to watch it, because it was campy 70s goofiness versus like PTSD. But yeah, super dark. But I digress. And then season 4, like, when they hit their stride with, they were starting to get into classic Trek, the classic Aliens, those short story arcs, 2 to 3 episodes, and then of course moving it to Friday nights. Like, I was 15 when it ended. Like, a 15-year-old, like, I mean, I didn't want to go out, and it's like, you want to go out and do stuff with your friends when you're 15. Go to the movies, go, whatever. You don't want to sit at home and watch your show. And we didn't have Netflix. Like, a couple people might have had a TiVo. You could record stuff, but like, that wasn't like readily available to everyone. So it had its issues, but I completely agree with what you said about it would thrive in today's market.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's just, it's one of those things where it's very unfortunate, of like everything it went through, because like I said, it definitely has its warts, and its issues, but overall, the characters were just so great. I love Archer, Archer's just a great captain, but yeah, I mean, it's just almost like what we were talking about a little bit before, kind of suffered from mismanagement,
Yeah, had they gotten Manny Cotto in there one more year, he was the showrunner for season 4, for those who aren't aware. I feel like they would have gotten, if they hit their stride 1 year earlier and brought higher viewers in a little bit earlier, it may have been saved, or Sci-Fi Channel would have picked it up. Because, I mean, I'm sure you've heard the story that the plan was to bring Shatner back in season 5 if they had made it. And he was going to be playing Mirror Universe Kirk, who was stranded in the past of the Prime Universe. And it ended up, he couldn't go home because it hadn't splintered off and created the Mirror Universe. And then there was a whole nother story idea to literally set the entire 5th season in the Mirror Universe, going off that 2-parter in season 4. And I'm like, man, just shut up and take my money. I'd watch the crap out of that.
It's true. Like, there was so much potential. And interestingly enough, with you bringing up the Kirk with William Shatner coming back, that actually, there's so much potential, and we can talk about it more in our follow-up episode for new content. But there's so much potential now with these Paramount Plus original movies with Star Trek that are going to be coming out, that it's like, we could see, possibly, like, what, let's have a Paramount Plus movie with the Enterprise crew back, and let's have William Shatner come and be, the Mirror Universe Kirk. It's like,
quick sidebar, happy 93rd birthday to the OG captain himself. Today is William Shatner's 93rd birthday, or it was yesterday maybe. It's either yesterday or today. I saw on Facebook. So if it reaches him, happy birthday, sir.
The complete OG, Oh, man.
But no, you're absolutely, like, if they even planned, like, they almost stage it like a monthly or every other month event. Like, hey, we've got the event of this season. We've got Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And the next one, hey, we've got Star Trek Discovery. We've got Special Ops Lioness in the summer. Hey, we've got the Frasier reboot coming this fall. Like, if you give people, like, you got to give them a reason to say subscribed, and I know it takes stuff a while to get greenlit. Like, I know, like, they said if we get another season of Prodigy, it's going to take 2 years to animate it, which totally sucks.
Oh, man. It's just that's another thing, too, that I think some of these shows and streaming services have run into, is that the production time for a lot of these streaming shows has gotten so out of control. It's like, and I realize with CGI and all this different stuff that things take longer than they did. But it's like, what I think a lot of these streaming platforms aren't realizing is that, most of the people who are consumers, like you and me, and, even our parents, and everything, remember the days of network TV where they were giving us 24 episodes a season, every season, and there was no 3-year break in between seasons or anything. And I think that it is irritating people a little bit, that I was even thinking, I was like, I loved Halo season 2, and I was like, oh man, yeah, it's probably going to be 3 years before I see season 3. It's like,
yeah, I honestly thought they'd canceled Halo. Didn't even realize they were still working on it.
It's true, because season 1 was very badly received by a lot of fans. Thankfully, it appears, I don't know if you've seen season 2 yet or not, but they very much righted the ship with season 2. Like, it was an excellent season. So if anybody's listening and you're on you're kind of on the edge of not sure if you should watch or not, 100% watch season 2, because it's worth it. It's very good.
I need to catch up on that myself, but like, I feel like I understand, for the actor's sake, 26 episodes a year was tough. Like, I know they were working a ton. So I absolutely respect them and not wanting to work that much. It's not fair to them, but there needs to be, this 10 episode model doesn't seem to work. Like I'll use Picard season 3 for an example. Could they have consolidated the first 4 maybe into 3 episodes? We needed it resolved a little too quickly. And we needed a little bit more time to say maybe decompress at the end. Maybe certain characters could have met past characters. Data, for example, and his daughter, Soji. That really should have been that they should have met. Even if it was just for like one brief scene, it would have been nice to see Seven get to interact with some of the other Voyager crew. I know they didn't want to spend a bunch of money on cameos, but like cramming in a lot of situations, they cram everything in the last episode or 2.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, you know what? If you have to go out, okay. And now, do I love the fact that we're not getting like 44-minute episodes? We're getting like an hour and 5 minutes, an hour and 10 sometimes. But like, going back to the days of network TV, like, if you want to cut it a little bit differently and you stretch the 10 episodes into 12, guess what? That's 2 more weeks of subscriptions you've got.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I feel like the best model, and this is kind of weird, you'll think it's weird me saying this, like the Discovery season 1 model, where maybe it wasn't the best or best received season, but they did like 6, 7, 8 episodes. They had a mid-season finale. They had a couple months off. They could catch up on some of their post-production work, or, if they had reshoots, they had a little bit of buffer time. And then we got like 7 episodes in the spring, because, once you get around Christmas and stuff, like the holidays, people travel, it's easy. It's easy to get behind on stuff. Like, you don't really need to pump out new episodes. You can do, sweeps like they used to. People aren't going to cancel their streaming services over like between Christmas and New Year's. They're going to catch up, if anything. So, like, if I could get 13 to 15 episodes of Strange New Worlds and I get a 2-parter in the middle, Like, again, shut up and take my money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ecstatic for that. I'd much rather get 15, even if they do 6, and then the 7th one is like a big episode. It's a big finale. Because God knows, I think you're probably still reeling from the last cliffhanger we got from them.
Yeah,
it's going to be like 2 years to like get a resolution, and it totally sucks.
Absolutely.
So, like,
and go ahead.
No, so yeah, just like be a little smarter. Think about how like the management doesn't seem to understand how the average consumer thinks. I guess is my point.
No, I absolutely agree, because like going back to Stranger Things, like the finale of Stranger Things, this last season was 2.5 hours long. Okay. Now here's the thing. I loved having that 2.5 hour, movie basically to finish it. Like that was fantastic. Okay. They could have literally split that up into 4 episodes,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And you could have had 4 more episodes of content. And then you think about it, that you combine that all together, you do a weekly release of that. Okay, you got people on the hook for 2 months to watch that season, and yeah, it is just like, sometimes it baffles me a little bit of like what this upper management is thinking, because it doesn't, like you said, it's not really thinking of like what the consumer wants and will put up with and will enjoy. It's very interesting. But
yeah, the other thing, after this we should probably get into the potential suitors for Paramount, but like the binge model versus the weekly release model, there are some things, like the perfect example for me for a binge model show is Lost, because it drug out so long that you got to the point at the end of the season, like, I don't even care anymore. I've had so many questions for so long, I can't remember them all. That's a perfect model for a binge watching show. Whereas most of the things we've been talking about are perfect for week to week. Because I find with myself and a lot of people I've talked to, if I binge a show, after about 2 weeks, I'm like, wait, what happened again?
Yes.
You like get it in your short-term memory and you talk about it, and then the hype dies down, and then you're like, oh yeah. Whereas like, is it nice to be able to watch at your convenience? Absolutely. But the thing is, so, okay, if I want to wait till the end of the season and then binge it, I still can. Like, I like having something to look forward to. Like, I look forward to Thursday nights every week when I get to watch the new Star Trek. I've been looking forward to Wednesday nights recently because I get to watch X-Men 97 and whatever Star Wars show, whether it be the Bad Batch, Mando, whatever. It's nice to have something to look forward to. Maybe that harkens back to the days of network TV that we grew up with, like you were talking about earlier. But I don't know, just a thought there.
No, I completely agree with you that there are some shows that function better, like you said, as binge watching versus weekly. And and it just kind of depends. Like, I feel like I'm trying to think of an example of one, like honestly, and some people may agree or disagree. I enjoyed the Ahsoka show. Like, I had a good time with that one.
Same.
But what I almost found with it though was that I didn't really feel like it functioned super well with the weekly release format. That I was like, story wise, binging it flowed much better. But I also understood why they did the weekly release though.
Disney seems to in particular seem to have issues, like they're shooting everything like movies, like all the Marvel shows. Like the first 3 or 4 episodes, you bored out of your gourd, and it's like, wait, what happened last week? Because it's shot like a movie, and it just literally stops, and they pick up mid-scene the next week. Whereas like you've got to literally shoot it like an episode and more chapter-based, I guess. So, but
yeah, absolutely. I've said that's one argument I've actually made with people, that I've said a lot of streaming shows have lost the script, in the sense of when it comes to that. I said, like, I have no problem with serialized, storytelling, but I said, but the proper serialized story, even if each episode is part of the greater narrative, should still have its beginning, middle, and end. It should still have a climax to whatever was going on in that episode leading into the next story, because that's just good storytelling. And so it's like, when you're watching an episode and then, like you said, it just literally ends, and it's like, whoa, wait, what just happened? And I don't know. I don't care for that personally.
I couldn't agree more. Like, the perfect example of that being done right is the last couple seasons of Deep Space Nine, where it's like, it is a continuing arc, but like, here's your chapter here, and you may focus on like Bashir and O'Brien, or Worf and Dax, or Cisco, or Worf and Martok, It broke it up that way, but there was always like an ending. It was shot. This is the next chapter in this continuing story, where it's not like we're just literally going to stop rolling and we're picking up in a week.
No, absolutely. And, you know, and that just goes back to like what we were saying of being good to your consumers, you know, being good to your viewers, you know, that viewers aren't stupid, you know, and, you know, viewers, you know, have been trained to watch TV in a certain way. And, you know, network TV was so successful for so long because it got the system down of how to tell stories, you know, and how to do it well. And so that's what I've told people, like, you know, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay, you don't want to do a monster of the week story anymore. You want to tell a serialized, that's fine. But take the notes from the writers who spent 30 years writing on network TV and honing that craft of how to keep their viewers engaged, and take that into your new form of storytelling with streaming.
Could not agree with you more.
Man. Well, we did mention this list of buyers, you know, for Paramount. So why don't we get into that? Because I'm kind of excited to discuss which players are on the board for this.
Oh, absolutely. Do you want me to just start rattling them off?
Yeah. So let's just start going through them.
So let's go back to the beginning. This has fallen through, but WB seemed to be the preferred buyer at some point. But with the debt, and they were going to merge versus outright purchase Paramount Global, but with the debt and the consolidation, and they were going to have to sell off some various aspects of Paramount, like supposedly there is a deal in place for BET and VH1, I think, and someone else, some of the subsidiaries to be sold off. I'm not sure if Nickelodeon's included in that. I don't believe it is. But there was a bid from Byron Allen, and I am totally blanking on the name of his company. He was a former actor who got into like behind the scenes and was extremely successful. He owns entertainment studios. He has put together a bid with some other a group, and gone in to potentially buy it, but I don't think he was looked at as having quite enough capital. The major players right now, and please feel free to chime in if there's someone I forgot. Skydance was one. Skydance Studios, they produced the J.J. Abrams Trek movies, which it doesn't seem like they'd be big enough. You know, I think they're like a $10 billion studio, but their CEO, whose name escapes me, is the son of the CEO of Oracle, as an Oracle software, who is probably 200 billion, and I'm probably way off, is what that company's worth. So he's got the financial backing from his father if they need to pony up some cash to purchase Paramount. Then the most recent one that's come into play has been Sony has partnered with, I don't believe it was with Byron Allen, who we previously discussed. Sony partnered up with, who did they partner up with? Apollo Global, who I believe was actually the ones who were trying to purchase BET and VH1. So Sony's going to have, the gist of it is Sony's going to pony up most of the cash, but because Sony is a Japanese company, and they would end up owning CBS, which is part of the whole Paramount Global after they remerged with Viacom, which is not confusing at all. If you want to know it, Google it, but your head's going to hurt. Sony can't own one of the big U.S. media markets, but because they've partnered with the Apollo Group, which is an American-based company, they have a way around it. And Sony's done really well with various IPs over the years. Actually, Sony was smart. Instead of trying to compete and create their own streaming service like everyone else did, they just made their own content and sold it to the highest bidder, and they're doing quite well. And then just to give a little background, so obviously Paramount is $15 billion in debt. Paramount is owned by a larger corporation known as National Amusements. The primary shareholder of National Music is Sherry Redstones, whose father, I believe, either founded it or owned it. I believe she owns like 78% of the stock, I believe, is what it is. So obviously a controlling interest. And she wants to sell because, with all the $15 billion in debt is not going to look good on your credit report.
Yeah.
But so that was part of what killed the WB deal. Like, they were going to merge, and then, if you're going to merge with someone to help, fix some issues, and they're going to come off you like an absolute crap load of cash for your shares, and then they get to decide what to do, kind of hard to say no to that. So right now it appears for all intents and purposes that Skydance is in the lead, but now that it's within the last week, this Sony deal has come on. So the plot thickens. It's very, very interesting. Do you have a preference to who buys it?
It's a tough.
Your head? Go ahead.
It's a tough one, honestly, because Sony has, a lot of experience, in the entertainment market, with films, TV, all that jazz. So like, I feel like they would definitely, be interested in that deal, especially with them not having a streaming service. That I feel like them acquiring, Paramount Plus as a means for their Spider-Man universe, everything like that, I feel like definitely would be a win for them. But I don't know, like, I like Skydance a lot. They produce good films. And I feel like Skydance purchasing them, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, feels a little bit more sincere in some ways, because I feel like if Sony merges with it or whatever, it could just end up being another bargaining chip for them to sell off to somebody else, or
great point,
or to merge with somebody else or whatever, where I feel like Skydance might actually be in it for the long haul, that they actually want to build something, by purchasing this, because like you said, they're a smaller studio and they might see this as a way to, increase their IPs, increase their standing, being a smaller studio in the studio world. So I feel like off the top of my head, I would say I'm leaning that I would prefer Skydance.
That's absolutely valid point. So I guess looking at it from a couple different perspectives, from the film perspective, Skydance seems to be the way to go. They've produced a lot of great movies. They've partnered with Tom Cruise on some of the Mission Impossibles. They may have, I don't recall off the top of my head, I don't know if they were involved with Top Gun Maverick, but like, they've produced some really great movies over the last decade. I feel like from the film perspective, they're great. They're the best fit. But, they're not really into TV. They don't have really any experience with streaming. There's been talk if they end up buying Paramount, do we see Paramount Plus merge with Peacock? Could that be a good move? Absolutely. Peacock's okay. It's not one of my most viewed streaming services, but that may just be personal preference based on content. Whereas Sony would finally have their streaming service. So would they just beef up Paramount Plus? Would that give you, PlayStation Studios has been formed recently. Gran Turismo was surprisingly good. I'm not sure if you've seen that. Definitely worth a watch for anybody who hasn't. Uncharted was solid. There's been talks of developing a God of War, film or series. If Sony has a streaming service, where it's going. Like, there's some interesting possibilities for sure in either way. Now, in terms of Star Trek, I actually think Star Trek's in good hands either way. Skydance produced the J.J. Abrams trilogy of Star Trek movies, which they're good movies. Are they exactly what, like, old Star Trek? No, but, a fresh take's not always a bad thing. There are some, I don't hate them. There's some things I think everybody has some issues with. We're not going to talk about Super Blood from Into Darkness, but yeah. And then Sony, Sony's done well with a lot of sci-fi type content before, so I would not feel bad about that. One really interesting point, and not to insult anybody, but the only way I can see this is Paramount has the worst lawyers on the planet.
Yeah.
So just to give everyone a little context, and you and I have talked about this before. Somehow, Secret Hideout Studios, owned by Alex Kurtzman, produces all the current Star Trek series. Somehow, in the agreement between Secret Hideout and Paramount, Secret Hideout retains partial ownership of any of the characters they either created or the newer backstories they've added for said characters. So maybe some of the new nuances to Captain Pike. Michael Burnham, if they're trying to do an Academy spinoff with Tilly, they retain partial ownership. So if they sell that, you can't really sell someone else's property. So I fault Paramount's lawyers for that. I don't know if someone didn't read the fine print, or that just seems like a really bad deal somebody made to me.
Yes, that's wild.
And so basically the workaround for that is Paramount's going to have to buy Secret Hideout from Alex Kurtzman and the rest of the ownership group. And basically the plan is, the rumors I've heard is it's going to turn it into Star Trek Studios, which again, not a bad thing.
No,
but,
yeah.
But it just seems like a big hurdle that, like, I don't know, if I'm Sony or I'm Skydance, that kind of that would kind of stick in my craw. Like really? Like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, because that's definitely I haven't heard of that type of deal with other studios. That's very interesting.
I've never heard that. Like,
yeah,
you own the IP, but your producing studio retains partial ownership. Huh?
Yeah, I've never heard that. That's absolutely. I mean, that would basically be like J.J. Abrams owning the character of Rey from Star Wars.
Exactly. Like, maybe there's some more legal nuance that I'm not aware of. I'm an engineer, not a lawyer, so that is a little pun there for you. So maybe I don't understand all the legal mumbo jumbo, and would happily willing to admit that. But that just doesn't seem. It just seemed like somebody goofed in that regard.
It's true. Like, now I do like the ideas of a Star Trek Studios, almost like how there's DC Studios within Warner Brothers. Like, because I think the IP is large enough, and especially now that we've seen, we're having the Paramount Plus streaming movies, we're having the TV, the live action shows, the animated shows, we're having all this different stuff that I think it almost does warrant its own studio within the studio system.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Marvel Studios and a head like Kevin Feige. Like, would love to have, like, I guess Kurtzman's technically the Kevin Feige type role right now, but yeah, like something just literally, like you said, focus it completely on Star Trek, and they just do nothing but Star Trek, and then get rid of some of these legalities here. Just like, let's get on the path so we can make content, develop content, and put out content.
No, absolutely agree with you, because it's just getting over the hurdles so that you can get your content to your consumers in the shortest amount of time at the highest quality you can. I mean, that's how you make money.
And yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, it seems like we've made some progress the last couple months. Whether it's going to be, it's looking like Skydance is in the lead to purchase Paramount right now. I'm curious to see over the next couple weeks if there's any more traction from the Sony deal, or who knows, maybe there's another player coming into play. But like, I mean, obviously, like everything in Star Trek is in limbo right now. So I mean, thankfully we did get some. And the Lower Decks ending sucks. I'm not the biggest Lower Decks fan, but I'm never going to be happy when they end a Star Trek show when we could have had more. Discovery is ending, which we knew was coming, though. Just Discovery season 5. This is what we've been waiting for. If you haven't watched it, you absolutely owe it to yourself to check it out. This is it follows up on a TNG episode, and I'm not going to say any more in terms of spoilers, but I want to tease you enough to make you want to check it out. But yeah, we're basically stuck in limbo. We know there's an Academy spinoff coming. There's other huge potential spinoffs we've heard about, like Legacy, but I mean, are you really going to announce something, then sell off your company, and if they cancel it, that's nothing but bad publicity.
No, exactly. Because I think now that I'm thinking about it from what I've read in the news, that the only three projects, I should say, that we know are 100% guaranteed to come out, whether there's a merger or not, a merger or a purchase or not, is we're definitely going to get Lower Deck season 5, obviously. We are more than likely going to get Academy, because I had heard rumors that Academy was filming this fall.
They built sets already. It's supposed to start, I think, in August is when filming is.
So that's more than likely absolutely going to happen. Now, whether it goes beyond 1 or 2 seasons, that'll be a question. But that one is going to happen. And then they, I believe they just finished filming the Section 31 movie. So that is going to be releasing at some point in the future. So we know that we'll get that, definitely. But yeah, like you said, I mean, Star Trek's future is kind of in limbo right now in terms of content, because, you have a new buyer who's going to be coming in who might decide to change everything. I mean, it's like, you could have a new buyer who comes in and says, hey, I don't like, that we're doing this and this. We want a spinoff of TNG right now. We want a spinoff of Deep Space Nine right now. It's like, everything can change when you have a new buyer come in.
Exactly. Like sometime this year, Prodigy season 2 is supposed to release in America. Somehow already released in France due to some, again, going back to what we said about the legal issues. Somehow in the agreement they signed, it was up to what was the term? I don't know. It was the region director or something. Basically, they were allowed to release it at their discretion. So Prodigy season 2 has released in France. So avoid spoilers on the internet. I'm doing it like trying to, like the plague. They've been all over Reddit. Thankfully, I've managed to avoid it. But again, we've talked about the lawyers. I think that once, okay, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice. I mean, really. But yeah, other than that, it seems like now if Skydance is really in the driver's seat and they are going to purchase it, and maybe they've had some influence. I have no idea, but it sounds like we're starting to trend away from the animation, because animation is not necessarily cheap, but like you said, basically, not to beat a dead horse, everything is in limbo. We don't know. And, if this isn't finalized for, once the deal's agreed upon, it's got to go through all the regulatory agencies. So is that another year? So are we going to get any Trek in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's a good question, because, I think, I have no idea when this purchase is going to go through, but I think it's possible that we could get an announcement of a buyout maybe in the summer or fall, possibly.
I'd agree, yeah.
But then, like you said, we have that whole process of going through, and so I mean, I think looking at it, I would say probably, if I had to hazard a guess, I would say we probably will get. I'm thinking we're probably going to get the Section 31 movie. Probably either late this fall or early spring is what
I'd agree with that. And then we will have Strange New World season 3. It won't be before. They did announce it won't be till 2025. We just don't know when in 2025.
Yeah, so so we might get that then. But I think, looking at like what you said though, because think about this. Okay, let's say the deal completely closes for the purchase, let's say early 2025, like maybe spring or something like that. Okay, so then you have possibly the consolidation and the creation of Star Trek Studios in there. That there is a possibility that we might not see any new Trek in 2026 at all. Like we might get continuations possibly of previous stuff, but we might not see anything new, depending on what this shakeup is going to be like and what they're going to end up ordering, and and what they're going to do. Are we, is it possible that we're just going to have Strange New Worlds going to be the live action show and everything else is going to be Paramount Plus streaming films? Who knows? I think that there's a huge amount, because Kurtzman and all the other ones, they have their 5-year plan of Star Trek, but all of that could change instantly.
Oh, absolutely. And And there's been rumors that Kurtzman has some other projects, which I don't blame him at all, that he wants to get made. And, maybe he does want to cash out his share in Secret Hideout so he can go make some other films. And you know what? More power to him. Like, the guy knows how to make entertaining, films and TV shows. Like, whether you like everything he's done, he's got some talent. He wouldn't have made it as far as he did otherwise. So, there's so much in limbo. Like, I wish we could give our listeners more definitive answers, but we don't know either.
Yeah. So, we really don't, and it is kind of that waiting game kind of not sure. And, I feel like it's kind of a terrible time, for Star Trek to kind of be in this limbo because it's now more popular than it's ever been. So I hope that we don't have too long of a break or too long of a restructuring of storylines or whatever. I hope they can get it together so that they can, continue to be delivering to the fans.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And so for everybody listening, definitely keep your eyes out on what's going to happen, because it's a lot is going to be changing in the next like 6 to 8 months when it comes to Star Trek, when it comes to Paramount, just with everything, whether Paramount Plus exists as a streaming service anymore, whether it's merged with another streaming service or shut down completely, we don't really know, but it's definitely going to be an interesting watch.
Oh, absolutely.
So, man, well, do you have any final thoughts, Jordan, on this whole merger situation, or anything of like what's going on, or anything final here?
I will say I'm optimistic. I was not real optimistic if WB had purchased Paramount for the future of Star Trek. I mean, just look at what happened between the DCEU. It's been studio interference. It was a complete mess. So I'm glad it's not going to WB. I would be okay with Sony. Skydance seems to have the most familiarity with it, though they have their own set of issues, not being overly familiar with streaming. But there's a potential merger, say, with like Peacock or another service there. So I'm hopeful for the future of Star Trek in general. Some of the other stuff, I mean, I'd like to see Halo continue. Obviously, I'd like to see Frasier continue, and just hope they can find a home for some of the really good IPs and the good content they've made already. I sort of hate to lose Paramount Plus, but it would be nice not to have to pay for another streaming service at the same time.
No, absolutely. And honestly, I would not mind if they merged with Peacock, because I have a Peacock subscription. So if I only have to pay for one subscription, I'd be happy.
Yeah, same here. I'm with you 100%.
But yeah, exactly what you said. I'm the same way. I'm very optimistic about the future of Star Trek. I think it's going to be very bright, no matter who purchases it. I think Skydance or Sony, I think it would be in good hands. I think they both realize what a cash cow they have if it's properly developed. And so I am happy about that. I am thanking God every day that Warner Brothers is out of the mix, because
yes,
like you said, it was just a mess with how they completely destroyed the DCEU due to mismanagement, what could have been a massively lucrative franchise. So I'm glad that they will not be touching Star Trek.
One other final thought. I literally just had this while we were speaking, just to play a little bit in Sony's favor. You and I actually were interestingly talking about this in a group chat we're in with some friends. So like we've talked about the history of Star Trek in video gaming, and Sony would be a huge partner. Can you imagine if Sony like got the rights to Star Trek and started producing some Star Trek games? Because I mean, there's actually, I've heard rumors dating back since J.J. Abrams was involved with Star Trek. He actually supposedly, again, can't confirm any of this, that he wanted them to start producing all the Kirk and Spock and like memorabilia and merchandise with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. And the heads of Paramount are like, we make $20 million a year selling like pictures of Kirk and Spock as with Nimoy and Shatner. No, I'm not. We can make new merchandise, but I'm not going to stop selling that because people will always buy it, myself included. So I feel lately like, I know, again, another misstep. Like I mean, you grew up in the 90s. How many, you remember all the TNG and DS9 action figures? I don't remember so many Voyagers, but like, there's not been a real great, I think they just recently did a toy line with Playmates, and I want to say Michael Burnham was one of the figures, but I think they only produced him for less than 6 months or less. So, like, again, another untapped revenue stream. It just seems like, yeah. So again, from the gaming side, Sony would excite me there, but maybe Skydance could get into that and help expand upon that too.
I completely agree. I think that the video game market for Star Trek is completely untapped. Sony has a lot of experience in that and has produced a lot of really good games too. And so I think I would be very excited to see, you know, what they could do, you know, in that field, because I think that if they were able to produce some really good Star Trek video game content, I mean, that would help boost the IP as well, because people who maybe don't watch TV shows but play games might get interested in it.
Oh, absolutely. It's basically free advertising.
No, absolutely. So, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the program. I think this was a great conversation about this merger and purchase system. So I think, you know, it's going to be very, very interesting to figure out what's going to happen in the next year, you know, year and a half. And, you know, hopefully it goes in the direction that we were talking about, and that everything is all bright.
I hope so.
Man, yeah. Well, definitely, I appreciate you coming on. You know, you're welcome on anytime. You know, any excuse to talk about Star Trek on the podcast is always welcome.
Well, I appreciate it. You know, I'm glad. I'm sure my family's glad I'm on here talking to you and not to them. So I always enjoy being on the show, and looking forward to coming back again.
Man, always. Well, thank you. Well, everybody who's listening, hope you enjoyed this episode, and you know, definitely like, subscribe, and share, and you know, let us know on social media what your favorite Star Trek show or movie is and character, and you know, that opinion might pop up in a later podcast. So, hope you all have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you in a podcast soon.